So today is December 16th, 2022. My name is Mary Margaret Bailey. And I am interviewing Frazer on behalf of the Mobile Bar Association's Archives and History Committee. Before we begin, I would like to formally obtain Danner's permission to have this interview recorded and transcribed so it can be preserved, edited, and released in whole or part by the Mobile Bar Association for viewing by its members and the public.
Can we get a little airbrushing or something too?
Yeah, sure.
You have my permission.
Okay. So just a few preliminary questions. What is your age?
78.
And when were you admitted to the Alabama State Bar?
72.
So you've been practicing law for 50 years, right?
Correct.
And the first area I'll ask you about is just military service, because I know you did serve. And so when, where, what age did you enter the service?
Well, I was 22 years old and I had just graduated from college. I joined the Marine Corps.
And what motivated you to?
Well, they had a draft in those days and there was no options, so I've never really even thought about it, but I just
But you joined rather than were drafted.
Oh yeah, that's correct. But I mean, I knew that I would be drafted if
Mhm.
I didn't, and so that was just always part of my plan to finish college, do my military service.
And that was the Vietnam War,
Correct.
right? What rank did you hold and where were you initially stationed?
Well, I went to officers candidate school in Quantico, Virginia. And then after that was commissioned a second lieutenant. I then went to what the Marine Corps calls the basic school to teach you how to be a second lieutenant. And then my first duty station after that was Vietnam.
So, and you were, how long were you in Vietnam?
Well, I was only there 4 months. I got shot in the left arm and sent home.
So was this a formative experience for you?
It was one I hadn't forgotten.
Okay.
It was not unbearable when I guess it could have been, but I missed. I didn't have any really horrendously traumatic experiences, so I was lucky.
Right, to get injured.
Well, it sort of was, because 10 days later, my whole battalion was in a terrible fight. A lot of people died, and so forth.
How long was your recovery from your injury?
Injured on September the 1st, and I probably went back to duty in April of 68. I was shot in 67, and so it's like 8 months.
So what type of duty did you have after that?
I went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I was an embarkation officer for what we call a med cruise. Marine Corps has a battalion plus some attachments aboard a Navy ship in the Mediterranean all the time. And so I joined a battalion that was gearing up for that med cruise, and I don't know how long it lasted, 5 months or something. And so that was, and then I just finished up my service in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, when we came back.
So when were you discharged?
In September, right before Labor Day in 1969.
Okay. So you grew up here in Mobile initially, right?
I was born here, lived here until I was 13, and then I moved away.
And you went to Birmingham?
Mountain Brook is where I live.
And were your parents from Mobile?
They were.
And I actually found a picture of the house. I know you told me it has been torn down,
Yeah, it's a parking lot.
and it was on government.
Correct. 950 road.
It's in here somewhere. Um. There it is. So is it this one to the left?
Yes, it is. Very hard to tell because I can't see it very well, but that apartment building to the left of it is still there. This house belonged to the Inge family. On the east side of my house was the Inge family, and that included Wank Inge, who was a judge in Mobile. And anyway.
Hold that up so they can see it. And then there's a little description about your family here.
Oh yeah, you got the Inge home at 956 government. It's interesting because I had Albert Carey Danner that owned it, according to this, was my great grandfather. But when I lived there and grew up there, it was owned by my grandfather, who was Mel Frazer, who was also a lawyer.
Okay,
And the Albert Danner Frazer that inherited is my father.
so your grandfather was a lawyer.
Yes.
And that was actually my next question. Were any of your family members lawyers? I mean, were you aware of him being a lawyer when you were growing up?
Yeah, I lived with him for a while.
Okay.
The whole family lived in that house, and he lived there also.
But your dad was a banker, right?
Correct.
And that's why y'all moved to Birmingham for his job?
It was for his job, but he left the First National Bank of Mobile and went to work for the Tennessee Coal and Iron Division of United States Steel in Birmingham. And then he didn't like that, so he got an opportunity to move to a bank in Maryland, and he took that. And then when I was in the Marine Corps, the family moved back from Maryland back to Mobile. And he went to the American National Bank.
So, what school did you go to in Birmingham?
In Birmingham, I went 1 year to Mountain Virginia High School, and then I went to Indians Plains School. It's a private school for high school.
And then you went to the University of Virginia for college?
Correct.
And how did you decide to go there?
I don't really know. I just was looking around for a place to go. My parents did not want me to go to Alabama or Auburn. So they thought I would play too much. And so, anyway, it looked like a neat place, so I went there.
And you liked it?
Some, I wasn't crazy about it.
And what did you major in?
I was in the commerce school.
Okay. And you graduated what year?
1966.
So you did that, then you did your military service. Did you know then what you wanted to do when you finished your service?
No, that's why I went to law school. I wanted to go back to school because I thought it would help me, but I didn't have any plan to be a lawyer or anything. I just went back to school. I felt I was needed a little breathing room after the Marine Corps.
And you just picked law school. I mean, your grandfather being a lawyer, did that influence it at all?
I don't know whether it did or not. I had a good friend in the Marine Corps who was a very, very bright guy that graduated from Harvard Law School. And that probably motivated me as much as anything. That I thought it had obviously helped him a lot. He was really smart, but it obviously helped him to go to law school. So I thought maybe it helped me.
Did you like law school?
I like some parts of it. I'm not a fan of school in general. That's
And
why
you-
I've been in the Marine Corps. I couldn't stand to go to another day of school at that point.
You went to the University of Alabama,
Right.
and did you think about going anywhere else, or was that just kind of automatic?
Oh, I thought about it for a while and actually, I don't know why I decided to go to Alabama, but I can't really remember. But I know that my father's good friend Sam Pipes was a lawyer, and he told my father, who passed it on to me, that he thought if I was going to work in Alabama, there wasn't a better place to go than the University of Alabama.
So do you have any special memories of things that happened during law school, good or bad?
Well, I wouldn't say anything very momentous. There were some interesting things. That was when the anti-war demonstrations were going on around the country. It took them a while to get to Tuscaloosa, but they got there while I was there. And so that was an interesting development, but it didn't involve me.
What were your feelings about it since you had served?
Well, I didn't like it very much. I thought it was damaging to our efforts.
Do you remember any particular professors?
Yeah, I remember a number of them, but I mean, I don't know for any particular reason. I just remember some of them.
Okay, so nobody that had made a big impression on you, I guess.
No, a lot of them made a big impression. Dean Harrison, who taught me contracts, was a very impressive guy, but there were some others too. And like any place else, you like some better than others, but there were some very good ones.
Okay.
I think the oldest ones who were there when I got there, other than Dean Harrison, had sort of let the development pass them by in the field of teaching, and some of them needed to, it was time for them to retire, but Dean Harrison was wonderful.
So when did Alabama make the switch to notice pleading?
73. That's when
Okay.
they adopted the rules of civil procedure.
So you were studying the older.
Both.
Oh, they already knew it was.
Well, they knew it was coming.
Okay.
And so we studied common law pleading, and I took that from Dean Harrison also, and I practiced for I don't know, about a year, it seems like, or so, filing demurrers and the like. And then we went to the rules of civil procedure.
I know when you and I have worked on cases and we had to read the really old cases, you would always have to explain that to me because I never studied it.
Yeah, well, it was hard to understand in some instances, but it was different for sure.
And you graduated in what year from law school?
72. I started in 69, graduated in 72.
And how did you end up at Albrecht?
Well, I think the real way was Brooks Holmes got to know my father, and he didn't know anything about me, but Brooks was a Marine also from several years ago, and so I think because of that connection, he called me and offered me a summer job after my first year, and so I came down and worked there and liked it. Now I also had family connections there. William Albrecht was my uncle. I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think it was the Marine Corps connection, really.
So did you work there both summers of law school?
No, my second summer, I was married, and my wife, Pat, had a job that she couldn't leave in Tuscaloosa, so we stayed there, and I went to summer school.
So did you meet her while you were in law school?
No, it's kind of interesting. I met her when I came back from Vietnam. I recuperated in Mobile, and I wasn't, I could get around pretty good for most of that time. And I met her then. And it's interesting, she had written me at my sister's request, she was a friend of my sister's, she had written me a letter while I was in Vietnam, because Kathy told her I really like to get letters. And I didn't know her, but she wrote me a nice letter, so I remembered that. And then when I met her, kind of rang a bell.
And is she younger than you?
3 years.
So she went to the University of Alabama?
She only went for 2 years, but she did go down there.
Okay.
She was not there when I was in law school.
Okay. All right. And I didn't ask you about brothers and sisters.
I have 2 sisters, an older one who lives in Birmingham, and a younger one who lives in Mobile.
So back to Almbrecht Jackson. When you first started, what was it like there at the firm?
Well, I loved it. I mean, I don't know what you're particularly interested in, but it was a great, hardworking atmosphere, different than today. Everybody worked on Saturday. And, you know, they even had a staff, always had at least one secretary there for the lawyers. It was, you know, it was hard work, but good. I enjoyed it.
And how quickly did you get into being able to try cases?
Almost immediately. Not risen in the beginning with someone else, but didn't take too long to where I was able to try it on my own. And that, you know, that smaller cases, you know, automobile wrecks with minor injuries and slip and fall kind of cases, and you know, a variety of them. Which
Partners did you like working with the best when you were just learning?
Brooks Holmes.
And how long did it take you to get into doing medical cases?
I think the first time I got involved in a medical case was in the, I would say, mid-80s. I'm not sure. Brooks and I tried a case together, medical malpractice case, and I think it was like 85 or something. I'm not really clear on that, but it's about right.
What was your beginning salary at
$11,400. Which I was glad to get.
So
Marine lieutenants make a heck of a lot less.
What was your daily routine like? You know, what time did you get into the office? And
well, it varied quite a bit depending on what I had to do, but I think their office hours were 8:30 to 5:30, but I almost always stayed later than 5:30 and frequently was in before 8:30, just depending on what I had to do.
And how long into your career when y'all started having children?
My first child was born in 1973.
So quickly, yeah.
But I mean, I was 27 years old, so.
And where was their office when you started working for them?
In the old Merchants National Bank building. It still had elevator operators in those days.
I remember that when I would go visit my dad at the Van Antwerp building.
Yeah.
And the old courthouse, do you I guess you tried a lot of cases there.
Yes.
And then where were the big lunch spots back in the early days?
Lunch spots.
Yeah.
You know, I really don't remember the names of any of them. I belonged to the Atherton Club and ate lunch there quite a bit, but I like to go to other places too, and I just can't remember where they were, what they were.
Did Tommy's Terminal?
Oh, yeah, Tommy's Terminal existed, and it was a real good one. I like that. But I couldn't walk there. I needed
Right.
to drive there.
And did I know there were the basketball and like softball young lawyers would do those types of activities. Did you do any of that?
I did a lot of it. I had a flag football team, which I participated in. I love that. They had a basketball team, which I participated in, although I couldn't contribute very much in basketball. But we played in the old Y, which is half a block from here on the other corner. Right there is now torn down, but that's where we played our basketball games. And that was a bunch of fun. Softball, we got started in softball when we challenged Hand Arundel to a softball game during the summer when both firms had a lot of law clerks. And so that was a social event, not a hard game, but of course everybody wanted to win. But so we played softball against them every summer for a little while, and then seemed like other firms kind of got into it. And I think that's really the beginning of how the firm softball began. Anyway, then we ended up playing other firms, But it was always during the summer while we had summer clerks, because I remember I see Brian McCarthy's picture up there. He clerked for us after his first year, and he was a tremendous athlete. So
Kind of a race.
yeah, he was a ringer softball team, but then he went to work for Hand Arundel, and he was a ringer on theirs after that.
And I know when I first clerked, Thursday nights were a big social night, and I think the lumberyard was then, but before that, I think it maybe been Trinity's or
Trinity's was a hot watering hole for a while. Crockmeyer's held that distinction for a while. I don't really remember the sequence of events. Maybe they overlapped. And then the lumberyard. And there was a place called Janaro's downtown that a lot of the young lawyers hung at. It was, I can't remember exactly where it was. I think it was somewhere on Royal Street originally, and then moved over to Dauphin Street, about approximately where, what's that restaurant now that the guy from Fairhope owns, Squid Ink.
oh yeah.
I think Janaro's was somewhere in that vicinity. I'm not sure exactly where. The young lawyers were very all friendly with one another, and the bar association was much smaller. Everybody knew everybody else, and there were just a bunch of people who liked to hang out there and do work for a while. Not to mention Judge Kendall.
I was gonna say, when I went to the lumberyard, some nights he would be there too. Hi, Dad. So, and were you involved with the young lawyers group at all?
I was never
An officer?
never really involved in it, but I went to a lot of the meetings and so-called meetings that were really social events. But I did go to those. And
did you do Mobile Bar Association events? I know they had more regular events back then.
Yeah, I used to go to those once a month lunches all the time, and they started off in the Battle House. That was the old Battle House, and then they went out to I can't think of the name of the restaurant. It was out there by Catherine Street. There's a motel there, and there's a restaurant at the bottom. It was Constantine's.
Oh yeah.
I had lunch in Constantine's for quite a while. That was good. And so yeah, I enjoyed all that. And I served on various committees at the bar.
And so who were at Ombrec, the other lawyers around your age that you worked with a lot?
Connie Ombrec was there. He's started about a half year before I did. He's my first cousin, so I was close to him. But we didn't work together a lot. Norman Waldrop was there. And he started about a year ahead of me, and so we did the same kind of work. So I was with him a lot. And I worked with everybody, EVPs, I worked with a fair amount. And when you start, you're doing research projects and go for kind of work for whoever needs help. So I work with a lot of people, and then after the guys that were younger than me, Doug Brown and Donnie Radcliffe, and ultimately Michael Upchurch and Phil Philpott, Brent Baker.
And so did you move more and more into medical malpractice defense?
Yes. In the late 80s, I got into where that's most of what I was doing. And then I resigned from that firm and started a new firm in 1990.
And so what was the motivating factor behind that decision?
I'd summarize it by saying independence.
And what year was that?
1990.
1990. And so it was you and Michael and Eddie?
The first group were me, Eddie Green, Michael Upchurch, and Phil Philpott.
And just tell me about yeah, I know that was a big deal. Michael said it was a big deal back then because it didn't happen as much.
Didn't.
And I know just from hearing y'all talk about the struggle of starting the firm.
Well, it wasn't exactly a good business plan, but it worked. I mean, and the main thing about it was we had a great deal of fun with it.
But I mean, y'all had to go out and even just find some cheap furniture and.
Oh yeah, it was quite an interesting experience, but it was, I think we all enjoyed it. I think Eddie worried too much and he didn't enjoy it as much as the rest of us, but we had a good time.
And so what was it like for you going from being an employee to being, employer and being responsible in that way?
Well, I don't know. It was, the difference is how much work we had. We didn't have much work in the beginning, and that was, troublesome as well as sort of a challenging deal. But we got busy pretty quickly, and fortunate to have some firms refer work to us that was good, and got to know some more people. But the main thing I think is that the difference was the group, our group was close, good friends, and it was just a lot of fun working together. And there are a lot of things you laugh at that maybe weren't so good, but it was just a lot of fun.
So I always got the sense that OnRec was a bigger firm with more red tape, and that when y'all started your firm, you didn't want all that.
We didn't have any red tape. We almost never had meetings. we just worked, and that was a lot more fun.
So is it a conscious decision not to grow your firm to that size?
Yeah, we didn't want, I don't know that we had the opportunity really, but we didn't want to be big. We liked no rules and, very informal way of making decisions and so forth.
And time-wise, the next thing, Ross your son went to law school and came back to Mobile, and we hired him to work at the firm.
right?
And what did that mean to you, having the
Yeah.
opportunity to work with your son?
Yeah, of course, it's wonderful. I mean, you have to worry about it. Is it gonna affect him in a bad way or something? But of course, I like having him there.
And then shortly after that is when Eddie's tragic accident and death. And I know that was a huge event in the life of our firm.
Certainly, it's terrible.
Um,
And Eddie was, if not my best friend, certainly one of them. And we were very close, worked together a lot. And, you know, when you're working together in litigation, you spend an awful lot of time together and go through some trying times that are, you know, anyway, you get to be very close. And he and I were great friends, and it was, you know, it was tragic.
and it took us years to work through getting his cases taken care of, right?
Yeah, several, I can't remember how long, but I had to pick up and get him to try some cases that I might have tried them with him anyway, but I had to take, you know, more responsibility for him after he was gone. And so that was a tough time.
So,
The only good thing about it is I've got a lot closer to his family afterward. And it's still close to them.
then just bigger picture, looking at the practices of law and how it has changed from your early days till now. What do you think are the biggest changes?
Well, I guess the number of people involved in it is a huge change. I mean, there's so many lawyers that I don't know now, and used to be, I pretty much knew everybody. And you go to motion docket on Friday and courthouse be full of people, but you know almost all of them. And so that was, you know, I think that led to more collegiality, more friendliness between lawyers, and that was pretty good. And things weren't as there weren't very many big verdicts, and so we tried a lot of small cases, slip and fall kind of cases, and that sort of thing. And that was better in a lot of ways because you got to go to trial, got to have experience with that, and go through all the motions that you need to do. And I think it was a whole lot more fun than spending all your time preparing for cases, which is what younger people have had to do. They don't get you know, this costs too much to try cases these days, and so the small cases just don't go to trial; they all get settled. And so, you know, it's hard for a young person to get experience. You know, they didn't mind sending me down to try a $1,500 case because if I lost, I wasn't going to lose much. But you can't, you know, you got to have an experienced lawyer to try a $1 million case. So that's a dramatic change in the practice, and I think an unfortunate one.
Well, I mean, if you think about your practice versus Ross's practice, and just how many cases that you had tried by like age 40 versus how many Ross had tried.
Yeah, I had a great advantage on him because of the variety of work that we did in those days, and the fact that so many cases went to trial. It's just quite different.
And then computers and online research, that has all changed dramatically from the beginning of your career to now.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. When I started, it was all typewriters, and if you did a brief, you'd have to have like 6 copies of it, which meant carbon paper between the sheets. And if you changed one thing, the secretary had to go and erase it on every copy. It was quite an interesting process, and the computers changed. And that was very gradual to where it got to where like it is now, where it's free and easy. But it was a huge change. And
And then moving from book research to online research too.
yes, that was huge. All the larger firms had big libraries, which of course is an expense on, takes up a lot of space. But that's the only way I knew how to do it. And so I still probably more comfortable with that, but you know, can't afford to have books anymore.
But I've always been impressed with, you have made an effort to stay abreast of all the technological changes.
Some degree, I kind of like it in small doses.
I mean, there are younger lawyers at our firm who are not as good as you.
Well, I don't know about that. I doubt that, but you know, some of it appeals to me, but I'm not real quick with it.
And then like, when you took the bar exam, you have to type or what?
Had to,
Did you take the bar exam?
absolutely.
Okay.
And
They
there's something called a ballpoint pen that you had to use.
Okay. I think I've just heard stories about Janie Shore's typed hers, I think.
I've never heard of anybody typing them, but I'm not saying she didn't.
Okay. But I think
I couldn't have done that. It would have taken me a week.
Let's see. Then tell me about the judges that you remember, just personality wise when you first started and
Well, when I started, the judges were Judge Hocklander, I think, Judge Hodnett, Judge Robertson, Judge, I can't remember when Judge Hogan became the judge. He probably preceded my admission to the bar. I can't really remember. Judge Billy Bowling was one, and all those guys were, you know, some better than others, but they were, you know, they were pretty good judges, and the whole system was different. They used to have, you know, each judge had his own docket, but they shared cases for trial. And so you go to, and they'd set cases all week. So you go down there on Wednesday with a case set for trial. You might be the fourth case on the judge's docket. If one of them went to trial before you, then he would call around and see, or his secretary would call around and see if there was another judge that was not in trial that day, and you might end up down with a different judge, you know, who didn't know anything about your case. But there was not a whole lot of pretrial practice in those days, so the judges rarely knew very much about the cases until the trial started. There wasn't a lot of, you know, discovery and motion practice quite like it is now.
and who were your most respected adversaries?
Well, always it was the Cunningham Bounds firm. Bobo, Jim Yance, John Crowder. John and I were in law school together. Jim was maybe a year or two behind me, and Bobo was probably 3 years behind me. And you know, I got to know that. We had a lot of cases with those guys, and I got to know them all well, and they were extremely tough, good advocates.
Do you think how do they compare to the lawyers we're up against these days?
Well, I actually think that those guys were better. I think Bob was one of the best lawyers I've ever dealt with, and Jim Yance was also very, very good. And you know, Buddy Brown joined him later. He's a heck of a lawyer also. And I've been lucky enough to try. In the early days I didn't, but more recently I've been lucky enough to try cases against lawyers from, you know, a lot of the cities, Birmingham, and so that there's some, you know, in the bar as a whole, the state, there's some pretty good lawyers.
So which case do you view as your best achievement?
I don't know that I could pick one. One of the most memorable ones was, you know, we were doing mostly a defense practice, although I did some collection work, so I sometimes was a plaintiff on very minor things like that, but, a lawyer from Pensacola referred a plaintiff's case to us, to Jeff Parker, who was a little older than I was in the law firm, and, Jeff didn't want to fool with it, so he asked me to help him, and, it was a plaintiff's case about a man that had drowned at Gulf Shores at the Gulf State Park, and very weird, interesting case. But we got a $500,000 verdict, which was unusual at that time. Largest one that had ever been approved by the Supreme Court at that time was $175,000 for a death verdict. So we made the newspaper, and I remember that case very, very well. It was a lot of fun.
What about your most bitter loss?
Well, I'm not going to talk about that, but unfortunately, I've had a few.
Right. Let's see, you touched on your activities with the local bar association, but you were involved in the leadership of both the American Board of Trial Advocates and the Defense Lawyers Association.
Well, yeah, I was the president of the Defense Lawyers Association, that's statewide, and I was president of the Alabama chapter of ABOTA, both of those things.
And did you enjoy
I don't
that?
really like the administrative work and any of that stuff. I'd rather work on a lawsuit than being go meetings and committees and stuff like that. I mean, it's helpful to do it. You get to know people, but I didn't really enjoy being an officer or any of that.
Well, and then one of these national organizations, haven't you done trips with them?
Oh yeah,
What is it called?
well, I've been to ABOTA trips. I've been to some nice trips with ABOTA. I've been to nice trips with American College of Trial Lawyers, and nice trip with the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. And the Alabama Defense Lawyers Association, when I started, used to have I think it was a 4-state meeting. I'm trying to remember who all. I think it was Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, that met together in the spring every year in somewhere out of Alabama, and I went to a lot of those meetings and had a good time with that. I mean, they were helpful seminars as well as being good social occasions.
So, what does it mean to you to be a lawyer?
Well, I don't think I can give you any sort of noble ideas about that. It's I think good solid work. You feel like you're doing something that's important. It's very important to have the proper levels of integrity, and that I really like that aspect of it, feeling like I'm always doing what I'm supposed to do. And but it's been engaging, enjoyable work, although extremely pressure packed.
Have you ever done any pro bono?
Well, lots of
Family.
family and other people that I know in one way or another, but I got one of those still hanging on today.
What advice would you give to young lawyers starting their practice now?
I don't know how to summarize that. Work hard. Sam Pipes told me when I was coming out of law school, he said, I don't care whether you're a banker or insurance salesman or a lawyer, if you want to be good at it, you got to do it more than 9 to 5. And so I remember that very well, and I think he's right. So I work hard, obey the rules, try to do the best you can do.
And what are your thoughts on sort of the work-life balance?
Well, my thoughts are that you gotta obviously plan time for your family, but I think working real hard is important, and I don't favor, as you might predict, this idea of work part-time and have family part-time. I just think it's better if you work hard and, you gotta have work, put in a lot of hours to do what you want to do.
I remember vividly you telling me in the context of a conversation about being a parent, just, that you really thought women, shouldn't work, that should be mothers unless they worked for you.
I don't remember saying it like that. I don't remember. Kathy Miller's been a great lawyer, and I wasn't probably the moving force, but I participated in hiring her at Albrecht, and she's been great, and obviously she's had a good family life too. But I think you can do it. I just think it's very hard, and I think, as you know, we've hired a number of very talented young lawyers that have been distracted by female lawyers, that have been distracted by their family lives. And I fully appreciate that. I understand it. But I just think it's hard on them. I mean, you can't do everything that they're trying to do.
And I had lunch with Kathy yesterday, and I was asking her about just if she was the first woman lawyer that you had worked with, and she said there was somebody else before her, but I forget what her name was. It was Dabney Doshi.
Was Dabney? I didn't remember that Dabney was there before. I did work with Dabney, but I don't remember that she was before Kathy. Maybe she was. I was thinking Kathy was the first with that firm, but I think you're wrong. But I don't think Dabney's practicing law anymore.
I don't think so either.
And that's been, Michael Upchurch's wife was a great lawyer whom I hired and was very proud of having hired her, but she didn't keep up with it, and I understand it, but that's I've had that happen too many times.
And this is getting more into the OMRAC thing, but like, I know did Brent not come with y'all originally?
He came the next year.
And that was sort of, strained.
Well, it was strained. Yeah. As happens frequently, he brought some work with him that they weren't happy about, and we had some disagreements. It's all gone now.
And I guess that's another change in the legal profession is the more mobility now, and firms, splitting and changing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when I started, almost everybody at every established firm had been there from when they got out of law school to then. People just didn't change very frequently. Some did, of course, but it's just not very frequent.
And then there's been a move towards the sort of more national firms.
Yeah, that's a change. There weren't, I don't remember that there were many out of town non-residents who were very active in Mobile back in those days. And all of the, at the Albrecht firm, they had a large corporate business tax kind of practice. And it wasn't big like New York, 1,000 lawyers, but it was pretty big from my perspective. And all of that kind of work, not all of it, but a lot of it is just gone away, and it's handled by, as you say, regional firms and bigger firms from other places. So that's, I think, a pretty big change. And in the last 20 years at least, maybe probably longer, there have been more and more lawyers trying cases from outside Mobile as well.
Coming in
Yeah,
to hear
coming
and
in,
practice.
yeah.
Mhm.
And, you know, well, one of the biggest changes is, I guess, some of the local firms merging with out-of-town firms, either from New Orleans or Birmingham or somewhere else, and that's changed I mean, it doesn't change the people, but it changes the sort of the appearance of things anyway.
The dynamics.
Yeah.
And we had other firms approach Fraser Green.
Oh, yes, but I think just about every firm in Mobile has, but yes, we have.
And what were your thoughts on our strategy that way?
Well, I never wanted to do it, and we always decided not to do it. And, you know, I have just enjoyed my independence. And so that's, you know, I didn't want anybody to tell me what to do from anywhere else.
So did you have any stories that you wanted to share?
No, I've had a lot of fun and a lot of laughs, but I'm not sure it'd be a good idea to tell them.
Well, if you could do it all over again, is there anything you would do differently?
Well, hopefully I'd avoid some of my mistakes, but I'm not sure. I can't just name one thing. You know, it's been a very rewarding career on the whole for me. I say that, and I've made lots of mistakes, and I hope that if I had it to do over again, I could avoid at least some of them. But I can't tell you exactly what it would be.
What about your like oral argument, 11th Circuit or Alabama Supreme Court? Or did any of those stand out?
Well, I hadn't had very many of them. I've been to the 11th Circuit, probably fewer than 10 times. And that case I tell you about about the man drowning at the beach, I had to argue that case in the 11th Circuit, or it was actually the 5th Circuit at that time. I argued that in New Orleans, and was affirmed. And the Supreme Court, I've had fewer arguments than that. And frankly, I can't remember how many. It hadn't been many, probably 2 or 3 in the Supreme Court. And that one of the changes is they used to actually let you argue in the Supreme Court.
Right, I know. Any other lawyers here in Mobile that have been influential, maybe, you know, outside of Albright, but just other lawyers?
Yeah, I've learned a lot from a lot of different lawyers, you know, just picking it up here and there as you go on the job kind of, and you know, a lot of them have been influential, but probably in minor ways. You know, I mean, sort of put it all together.
So who would you say was the best trial lawyer that you watched?
The best trial lawyer that I've ever tried a case against, I guess, was Bob O. Cunningham, and Jim Yance is right in there too. Very, very good lawyer. But there, you know, Buddy Brown was great. Leon Ashford from Birmingham, great. So I've, you know, I've had the good fortune, I guess, of being involved with some really, really good lawyers. And all of that helps. You learn from it every time you do it.
And I never got to watch you and Eddie try a case together, but I have seen you and Michael, and I think y'all counterbalance each other well.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. But yeah, I really liked working with Eddie. Eddie was the most dedicated worker I've ever known, and we had a bunch of fun together. Although it's sometimes quite traumatic, but afterwards you can always laugh about it.
And then I guess you had to travel a lot to take depositions of experts.
Yeah, and that's one thing I don't miss because I'm not doing that these days.
Okay, well, those are all my questions. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I appreciate what you're doing. Hope it works out well for everybody.
Well, thank you for your time.
Sure.